talk about is a reflection. And remember, a reflection just flips a figure across the line. So if you look at it, if the graph of negative f of x is a reflection of the graph of f of x across the x-axis. So here in green, I'm showing you the x-axis. And notice, this blue one was f of x, and when I multiplied it by -1, it just flipped upside down. And this goes back to, remember, if a is positive, we open up, but if we switch a to negative, we open down. Remember, we talked about positive people smile, negative people frown. So when you multiply by a negative, it's going to change the sign. So if you're positive originally and you multiply by a negative, you're going to have to open down now because you're negative. If you're negative and you multiply by a negative, well, now you're positive, so you're going to have to open up. All it does is it flips it over the x-axis. That's what multiplying by -1 does. If the negative would happen to be inside the parentheses, so if you had f of x and then you found negative f of x, you would flip across the y-axis. This is much less common. This first one is the one you're going to see much more of. Okay, so if you have a negative in front of the function, it's going to flip over the x-axis. So let's look here. We want to describe the graph of each function as related to the graph of f of x equals x squared. So now we're going to have a few different things going on. First of all, I can see I multiplied by a -2. So multiplying x squared by a -2, it's not only going to flip the graph, but notice I'm multiplying by a number bigger than 1. So it's going to make it skinnier. So the graph flipped or reflected over the x-axis. See how I flipped? Then multiplied by a number bigger than 1, that means I got skinnier. And then after I got skinnier, notice I subtracted 3 at the end. So now I got skinnier and I moved down 3 units. So if you look back at my original graph in blue, you can see to get to green, I flipped it, it got skinnier, and it moved down 1, 2, 3 units. Just combining about everything we've learned so far. And then also, if you look at the second one, well, you can see I have a -4. So as soon as you see you're multiplying by a negative, you know the graph is going to be flipped over or reflected over the x-axis. And then that negative number we multiplied by is bigger than 1, so it got skinnier. And then now, this is one we haven't seen in a little bit. We added inside parentheses. Here are those sneaky parentheses. Okay, that means I'm going to do the opposite of what I see, so I'm not moving 2 to the right. We're moving 2 units to the left. And then at the end we have this +1. Remember, outside of parentheses, they're not going to try to trick you. So, and we moved up 1 unit. So now let's see if all that is true. Did I flip over the x-axis? Yes, I did. Did it get skinnier? Yes, it did. I moved 2 units to the left. Now, you may be thinking, no, you didn't. This scale is by 2s, not 1s, so I moved 2 to the left, and then up 1, right there. You can see I'm exactly right. You can always check your answer by just following what you wrote down. I reflected, got skinnier, moved over 2, up 1, and remember, looking at the scale of this graph, that's why it looks like I only moved over 1, because this graph goes by 2s. Last thing I want you to look at, we just kind of have everything put together here. Okay, now remember the one thing for horizontal translations, you go to the right when H is negative and you go to the left when H is positive. Remember, that's the one we're thinking of a little differently than how it's actually written in the book because we thought of it as X plus H. So make sure you change those things on this, but other than that, this is just a place where they're all in one spot where you can look at them all together. That's all there is for this lesson. Not so much computational, but mostly understanding what each of these horizontal translation, vertical translation, reflection, and dilation does to that graph. And my goal is that you can look at a graph and say, here's what they did to get there by just looking at the equation. That's all I have for this section. Let me know if you have any questions.